The most recent Gallup State of the Global Workplace report showed that only 9% of South Africa's workforce is engaged, and that is if staff members actually manage to get to work in the first place. This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield, and tonight we look at the state of South Africa's workforce. Joining me is Lucy Roux, Marketing Manager at Paragon Interiors, and Gail Montre, who is Vice President of Global Communications at Steelcase. How bad is South Africa's workforce? How bad a state is South Africa's workforce in, rather?
Well, according to Gallup, which is a survey that we use a lot, actually around the world, so when we're in South Africa but other places, the 9% is very low engagement.
What does that mean? What does the engagement mean?
Good question. Engagement, the way Gallup describes it, is engaged employees are the ones that are the most innovative, the most willing to collaborate, the ones that get up every day and think, I'm happy to go to work, the ones who don't mind working a few hours later, the ones who show up for work all the time, and they believe that the engaged employees are the ones that are really driving innovation. Okay, but a 9% rate, by global standards, pretty diabolical? It is, it's low. Unfortunately, the global statistic would alarm you as well, because they believe that as much as 87% of the workers globally are either somewhat engaged or actively disengaged. Now, actively disengaged is pretty grim.
It is pretty grim. I mean, what sort of people are actively disengaged? I mean, you've got to be in a pretty grim job to be actively disengaged. If I was a grave digger, I'd be pretty disengaged, be in denial. If I worked in a call center, perhaps, having to deal with people like myself on a daily basis, I might choose to be disengaged. But surely the workplace can't be that bad, Lucy?
Well, the actively disengaged is actually employees who are destructive to the organization. So they really don't like their companies, their jobs, and they proactively try to put other people off their work.
They're like generations actors, for example.
Possibly, at the moment.
I mean, what would we, we're going to take a real-life example, would we take the Generations cast, the 16 members of the Generations cast who walked off set objecting to terms and conditions of their work, who got fired, who now are hosting press conferences, asking for public sympathy and public support, would they be classified as actively disengaged?
I think there's always, three sides to every story, so you'd have to really understand the intricacies of what their day-to-day lives were like at work. So I think it's quite hard to comment on something like that without knowing, maybe the subtle things that happen at work. So maybe you do something that's out of the ordinary and really excel in an area, and no one says thank you. That might not be something that's in the public arena, but something like that starts to really eat away at you.
Are we not a bit too soft in the 21st century, Gail? I mean, we look at the workplace. In a place like South Africa, you're lucky to have a job. I'm not suggesting that workplaces should be horrible and abusive places, but do we not get just a little bit spoiled and a little bit petulant if there isn't fresh filter coffee in the machine? It's a human rights abuse, which is complete rubbish. I mean, are we a bit soft as 21st century workers?
I don't know if we're a bit soft, but I do believe that people need to feel a sense of purpose. And I think when you get up every day and go to work, I don't think it's about the coffee or some of those other things. I mean, I think those are nice things to have. And the environment can make a difference. I think the environment can cause you to more enjoy where you are, or be able to think better or work better where you are. But the disengaged part, or the part with the purpose, I think that's really what's at heart. That you could get up and go to a place where maybe the coffee's not working, but if you don't really have that belief that what you do made a difference, and that you enjoyed it while you were there, and that you contributed, I think that's a huge part of the people who are disengaged, perhaps versus disgruntled.
Disengaged, I mean, we can talk about disgruntled, we can talk about all of those sorts of issues, but being disengaged is actually, it's a management failing then. You're going into work, you're performing a task, you're not participating in something bigger than yourself. I mean, is that really the problem that the workplaces suffer?
I don't think it's just management, but I think management could be a huge part of it. I think that the people who go in and don't have that sense of purpose and don't understand where they fit or feel that sense of involvement, or one of the things we've discovered, it's one of the biggest factors is the people who feel they have no choice or no control. That's a huge part. So obviously having that choice or control over what you do is big. The area that we deal in is about the work environment. And if there's a way that you can give people somewhat, or that sense that they do have some control over their physical environment, that can make a difference.
I suppose also in the sluggish economy, and economies around the world have suffered this problem. We've seen jobs created in the United States again, but Spain has got a similar unemployment issue to South Africa, a similar youth unemployment issue to South Africa, where people feel disempowered because it's not just as easy as, well, I don't like place A, I don't have purpose in place A, I can go to place B to find purpose. Well, you are trapped then, and in a low-growth economy like ours is at the moment, of perhaps 1 to 1.5% growth in 2014, perhaps more people are trapped in jobs, dead-end jobs, that they would otherwise in other circumstances choose not to be.
Well, Kelly Group recently did a study where they found that South Africa has the lowest job change in the world, so around 20%.
Once you've got it, you hold on to it for dear life.
But I mean, countries, I know Australia, their job change was 60% in 1 year. I mean, that's crazy. How do you build vision and continuity in an organization if 60% of your workforce is leaving every year? I mean, I think what you expressed earlier is actually a generational difference. Different generations feel differently towards work. The old generation, tends to think, well, just get on with it. You should actually be happy to have a job. Your Gen Xers, who are your 40-year-olds, they're sort of quite independent. They want flexibility. They want to be able to balance their personal life and work life. And then Generation Y, which is actually the generation giving us a real run for our money, they want everything and more. Their expectations of their employers are incredibly high. They want good coffee. They want to be asked, how are you feeling? They basically want their bosses...
They've gone soft, is what you're saying.
Well, schooling has changed, which is quite interesting, and that influences it. When I went to school, every person worked on their own, and you just tried to do your best. The generation that's now coming out of school and out of university, they worked in groups and in teams, and you got a certificate just for participating, not for being the best. And so that changes the way generation actually feels about work.
It's so terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying, because as an employer, of course, you look at this Generation Y coming through, and they are Californian in their attitudes. I mean...
and that's good or bad?
I don't know. I think if you can harness that, it's probably very useful, because you have people who will collaborate. They would be less likely to stab each other in the back. It's less Wall Street in its nature. And you probably get healthier companies if you're prepared to harness it. But then workplaces have to change. And perhaps the problem with a lack of responsiveness at work is that workplaces are still stuck in the mold of the 40 and the 50-year-olds, rather than sort of encompassing what kids have grown up to expect.
Yeah. Well, as a 50-year-old, I'd prefer to say they're stuck in the way that they were designed in the 40s and 50s.
No, absolutely.
And maybe not for 40 or 50-year-olds, because this is a 56-year-old who's always wanted a better workplace. But I think you're right. In fact, if I can just pick up on something you were saying, to add to that, when we do studies of what really matters to people in their work environment, it's really interesting the results you get. And when they talk about the things they really want, the coffee, or the, for a number of years it was the foosball machines, or the ability to play
everybody wants to work in the Googleplex.
That's right.
Yes.
What we actually found now is, and it's pretty high statistics, 98% of everyone we surveyed across all of the age groups think that those things are a basic. They're given. Some of the basics they expect. They actually, the things they expect are safety, natural light, a good temperature, coffee's nice, and access to good food and light. Those are basics. So someone coming out of university right now would go someplace and just assume that that's what they'll get. Then the things that they told us really make the difference, I think, is where it's a little bit surprising, it's interesting, and I think it goes back to people enjoying what they do. It was access to other people.
If you're going to spend 10 hours a day, who really works an 8-hour day anymore? If you're going to spend 8 hours or 10 hours of your day in an environment, you need to have people around you who are like-minded, and it's that sense of purpose. You mentioned it earlier on. Purpose-driven organizations, and more research, and more American authors are coming through with this concept. The research that is being done in places like Harvard, people in companies need purpose. Companies need purpose, and people need to feel they're part of something bigger, making a positive impact and making a difference. I mean, that's got to come through strongly, Lucy.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, if you are spending most of your life at work, it's got to be more than just about making money. I think if you also look at branding and where it's going, some of your big multinational brands, it's not just about providing soap or dishwashing liquid, it's about helping that mom to spend more time with her kids. So everything has gotten a lot more deeper and more meaningful, and it's more of a holistic approach to life, where you want work-life balance, you want to be making an impact on your environment. I mean, we recently read the Towers-Watson study from 2007, where they found that basically more than half of the factors relating to why people go to a company, stay at a company, and are engaged at a company are related to things like what's your CSI initiative? Are you giving back? Do you care about your people? Does senior management sincerely care about your well-being? So it's far more than just my particular job, but what impact can I have on the world by working here and by everything I do, everything I buy?
In tough economic times, how feasible is it to create that ideal workplace? Because suddenly it becomes about cost. Suddenly it becomes about doors being closed and meetings happening behind blinds that have been scrolled closed, and people are worried about their jobs. The work environment for the next 2 or 3 years, at least in South Africa, is going to become a little more unsettled. Will we be as picky?
Good question. I think we should be, because I think even when the economy is really difficult, that war for talent continues to be.
It's the highly skilled people who will always be picky.
But the issue of cost is a really good one. I feel that we've just come through, not equally in every country, but we've come through a period of downsizing everything.
Yeah.
How could we reduce real estate because the economic volatility has been a little bit too much to deal with? And I think even in countries that, like the US, that have felt a bit of a recovery, that fear of the economic volatility is still there.
Yeah.
So how you design or plan for a work environment where you can reduce costs and still create a better environment, it's entirely feasible. It's entirely possible. You just have to think a very different way from the way offices may have been designed even 10 years ago. There's a fundamental shift that could occur more aggressively if we really took advantage of fresh thinking, or even all the devices we use, the mobility.
Completely. I mean, the buzzword at the moment, buzzwords, because there are two of them, employee engagement. And it is about treating people like grown-ups in the workplace, which ultimately what it boils down to, the old-fashioned dictatorial downward management, do as you're told, create the initiative, create the environment where people can be perhaps just a little bit more giving. That's what you pay them for, ultimately. Get the maximum value. And if companies can get that right, Lucy, we're probably onto a winning ticket.
Also, I think looking at costs, I mean, there's only so low that you can crunch your costs, like your rental costs, your cost of furniture, or building costs for a new office. But the one cost that people don't actually quantify is looking at the cost of your turnover, or the cost of productivity, or what is the cost of this disengagement. Because those aren't as easy to measure, but that's actually having a huge effect on business today. So if we focus too much on making our workplaces smaller, more compact, squeezing everyone in, and the diverse workforce that we have today, you're forgetting their salary bill, and that's your largest cost. And if you make it hard for those people to actually get their work done, then you're going to start having costs in other areas. So it's almost like trying to find a leak, but making sure you're getting the right one.
There we go. Let's not rob Peter to pay Paul. Lucy Roux, Marketing Manager at Paragon Interiors, and Gail Monterey, Vice President of Global Communications at Steelcase. The thorny topic of employee engagement. Just how engaged are you, or are you a Generation soapy actor? Thanks for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow from the highly engaged team on Tonight with Bruce Whitfield. Goodbye.